All right, I guess we'll get started.
Welcome, everybody. We're here tonight to learn about Meshtastic and maybe possibly Meshcore. I'm going to introduce Eric here that's going to give the presentation. What I would like to do is field questions during the presentation instead of waiting till afterwards so that we don't have to go backwards on the slides or anything like that. So please, if you have any questions during the presentation, just raise your hand. And you'll have to use a microphone because we're also on Zoom and we're also recording for YouTube for later down the roads. So I would like everybody in the virtual world to hear what the question is so they can also hear the answer. So please raise your hand and I'll come around and give you the mic and we'll go that way. So now I'll just turn it over to Eric. Thank you, Eric.
Yeah, thanks, Ron. Thank you. Appreciate it. You haven't even seen the presentation yet. All right. Let's see. So about me, I'm Eric. I'm a ham, if anybody didn't know that. So I'm also a software engineer and a homesteader and a radio and electronics nerd. So I kind of, have been learning about this stuff for the last year, and it's pretty exciting. Kind of dovetails a lot of different things that I like, software development, radio, and everything. So, and electronics. What is Meshtastic? So basically, kind of build up from first principles here. There's something called LoRa, L-O-R-A. Kind of stands for long range. This came out about 10-ish years ago, and people were using it for all kinds of electronics hobby projects. Telemetry from a weather station 2 miles away, or remote control cars, or things like that. Just basic, at-home DIY projects people were doing with radio and their electronics, and their little microcontrollers for the most part. And a few years ago, somebody decided to make a mesh network that used these radios. And that's kind of where Meshtastic was born out of. So essentially, you broadcast information about yourself, your own device. And when I say you, I mean the radio. People receive that. They add it to their little node database of nodes they've seen and ones they can talk to. And then that continues as far as the mesh goes. It's kind of like a spider web. It goes out, different layers. And then, the furthest one over here can talk to the furthest one way over here, is kind of how you could think of it. Now, there's a limit. You can set a limit to how many hops are between the furthest node you can talk to. By default, that's 3. You can set it as high as, I've seen it as high as 7. But there's some downsides to doing that. But, conceptually, that's the idea is, this network just kind of forms from these broadcasts. You just leave your device on for a couple hours and you'll see a bunch of nodes and you can start to send messages to people. Every device kind of, depending on how it's set up, I shouldn't say every device, but most devices relay messages. So when they see it, they'll relay it again. Oh, sorry, I should turn it in. Do this. Sorry about that. When a message comes in, the device will relay it again. And then the ones that it can see will do the same until the message basically expires as far as the number of hops that it's allowed to go. Routes are automatically established between nodes. Meshtastic has some configuration settings that allow you to do more of a repeater type node or a router type node, but most people frown on using those modes unless you really know what you're doing. So almost every Meshtastic node is a client. There's a mode called client mute that makes it so it doesn't rebroadcast. And that can be really good for if you have a node that you're carrying on your person that's not very stable, or if you have it in your car, that kind of thing. You don't necessarily want it to be constantly rebroadcasting messages. And it's low bandwidth. So, we're talking about text here for the most part, although eventually there should be some capability for things like static photos, low resolution photos, at least, things you would send over a text on in a normal phone. Uh-oh, I'm going to remove Ron. Bye, Ron. All right. So anyway, this is kind of just a conceptual graphic of what it looks like. So you've got your Meshtastic nodes. Those are the brown things. And then that little thing with the keyboard is also one. And you can connect to your phone with Bluetooth. That's kind of the most common use case for this. You would carry it on your person or in your car, and it, just Bluetooth, lower energy type thing, like any other Bluetooth device. And then the app on the phone will show you your text messages. You can see your nodes list, everybody you've seen, including a history. So, I have nodes from months ago still listed in mine that I can go look at. And I've even had airplanes fly over recently and send messages, and they'll show up in the node list. It's kind of fun. But you can kind of see, we're going through a bunch of nodes to get that one on the left with the little keyboard, the little, purpose-built device there. So that's going through a bunch of hops to be able to get to those phones. And then over there, we've got the laptop. With a laptop, you can either connect to your node via USB or Wi-Fi or Bluetooth. And that's kind of a nice thing. If you want, there's different use cases for this. If you don't want to use a phone, you have two options. You can use a laptop or you can have a purpose-built device. And I have a few examples of all these things up here. After the presentation, you're welcome to come look, poke around, send some messages. I'll show you the ins and outs of all of it. So yeah, LoRa, the magic behind LoRa, and this gets a little technical, so don't worry about it if your eyes glaze over. But it's chirp spread spectrum. So that is basically using sweeps of frequencies to encode different characters is kind of how you can think of it. And those sweeps get through a lot of noise very easily. And so that's really the big innovation behind a lot of this is how they devised that and how noisy the environment can be before the signal drops out. And so, when you send a message with LoRa radios, you can go many miles on just a watt or so of power, which is very hard to do on a radio like this. On this radio, if I was listening for, I might just hear static, but my radio might pick up a message, which is kind of cool. It uses the ISM band. That is the Industrial Scientific and Medical band. And in the United States, that is an unlicensed band that anybody can use for whatever purpose they want. You don't have to ask the FCC for permission. You don't really have to identify yourself whatsoever to anybody. And you can do encryption completely legally, which is not generally the case with a lot of radios, in the United States at least. So there's a bunch of different presets. These are called modem presets. Essentially, the LoRa radio is acting like a modem. And what it is doing, you can do a short range turbo. That gets you really high data rates. We're at 21 kilobits a second. It's like it's 1993 and we're all really excited because we just got back from the computer store. But yeah, like that, I mean, that's quite a bit to run over these little radios. And you can see way over on the right, there's the link budget. The higher that number is, the more resilient it is to noise. So that's kind of what you can think of. 140 is pretty darn good already. 161.5 is crazy good. So, but you get barely any data rate. You can see there at the bottom, it's 0.09 kilobits a second. It's not very fast. So most of the time I highlighted that in green there because long range fast, is 1 kilobit. And the bandwidth we get from that is pretty good. And it goes quite a ways. So it's a good, kind of in the middle setting that almost everybody is using along fast with these right now. If you're in a very cluttered environment like a city or a conference or something like that, Hamfest is a good example. They kind of overloaded long fast and the radios didn't respond very well to that. So in those environments, short fast has been kind of a big one people are switching to. So just something to know, but there's a lot of options. And this is just kind of a graphic showing you the same information about the link budget. To give you some other numbers to compare it to, your typical Wi-Fi might handle 80 to 100 dB of loss. 153 dB is many times more than that of loss. So it's pretty good compared to Wi-Fi, for instance. Okay, so I don't think my audio is actually going to work, but it might. Oh, okay. No, it's only playing on my laptop. That's okay. We can skip these. These are just little like videos of what it looks like. I think if let's see if this, I can't skip around in these. Yeah, what's up? Hi. There we go. I was just going to show this. This is what the traffic actually looks like on a waterfall display. So it's a little more interesting later here. You can see these sweeps. So yeah, there's a preamble. Essentially what you're looking at is a data packet. So there's a preamble that says, I'm talking now, and then it broadcasts a message, and then it says, I'm done now. Yeah, go ahead.
And are you going to talk about the purpose of Meshtastic?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, I'll get into that. I'm
Okay.
going through the technical stuff first.
okay, thank you.
I can skip over these videos. But yeah, you see those sweeps, that's kind of what it looks like. So yeah, I went over some of this already, but you know, 906 megahertz is kind of what mostly is used in the United States. So it's called slot 20. The ISM band has 104 slots for this. So you know, you can get an antenna that works on that frequency and it'll work great. Yeah, I kind of went over this. Is a lot of technical stuff. Skip over that. Where is it useful? So, you know, there's quite a few hams in here. I recognize a lot of people. I'm a ham. And so VHF and GMRS and APRS and even HF radio, they all have pros and cons. VHF and GMRS are pretty heavily used around here. Those are both licensed by the FCC. GMRS is pretty easy to get. Ham is a little harder. And APRS is also a ham band, or not band, mode. The thing is, none of the ham stuff, and you know, there might be a way to get GMRS to be encrypted, but generally it's not. You can't really get encryption for a lot of the messages you're sending, where with Meshtastic, you can absolutely do that, and it's very strong encryption. So you're kind of in this category of, I want to send text messages, or I want to be in a chat room off grid without any ISPs involved whatsoever. I want to be able to go some number of miles per hop, depending on your terrain. It's, you know, maybe one if you're in a really rough area, a lot of hills around. If you're on flat ground, it'll go 20 miles. So you can even get, you know, antenna setups and stuff that'll go further than that. There are people who've gone over 100 miles with this. It's hard to do though. But you know, you can only do digital. You can only really do texting, but you know, that's asynchronous. So one of the things that sets it apart from a lot of the other, you know, especially the ham stuff, is most of the ham communication is synchronous. You have to be sitting there on your radio, right? That's good for a lot of things. I like to rag to just like everybody else, but I'm not always at my radio. With Meshtastic, the way things are going, it's going to be a lot more like texting, where you can check your phone every 2 hours and see what people have said, you know, which has a lot of benefits. It's cheap to get into. There are a couple other kind of competing radios like this. I think one's called the Bear Claw or Bear Tooth. I can't remember exactly the name of it, but it's like $2,000. Like, it's extremely expensive. They're cool, but they're just expensive. And it has a lot of the same benefits that this has, but yeah, that's really, if you want asynchronous communication, you want encryption, and even things like email have been implemented with this. I'll get into that later, where you can send a message to somebody and have it stored, and then they can go fetch it later with their credentials. So, did that answer your question, Judy?
Yeah, I knew, I just wasn't sure.
Oh, okay. Okay, I just want to make sure. Yeah. For devices, I've got a bunch up here I'll show, and you know, like I said at the end, you can come up and look. There's some big manufacturers like Heltec, Liligo, and Rack. And then there's some smaller ones like the Station Gs2 and the Seed Studio. There's actually several more manufacturers that I didn't bother listing here. When you go to there's a website that allows you to flash these devices. So you plug it in, you go to the website, you click some buttons, and it puts the software on, which is pretty slick. I actually used it a bunch today to update a bunch of my devices. But in there, when you click with the device picker, it's this huge map of different devices. So, you know, it's really exploded in the last year or so. You know, back a year ago, it was maybe 10 or 15 different devices that existed. Now it's like 100. So most of them are very small. So down there on the bottom right, we've got a couple devices from Heltec. The one on the left is kind of an earlier device. It's just called a mesh node, I think. And then they have a newer device on the right that uses a different type of chip that is lower power. So it lasts a lot longer when you've got it running on a battery. If you want to have like a portable device in your pocket, the one on the right's a lot better. And that's called a T114. Both of these can run the same Meshtastic firmware, versions and everything. They have mostly the same capabilities. And this manufacturer makes some really good devices. There's a handful of other devices that they make, but these were probably the most popular here. They did have some issues a while back. I almost removed that bullet point from the slide because they fixed everything. There hasn't been anything new that's bad reported about the revision. So, that's a good thing. And they did send me 6 free replacements, surprisingly. Good balance of performance and cost with these guys. Those devices, they're raw by themselves. The one on the left is probably about $22. The one on the right's around 30 to 40, depending on what features you want. LilyGo, this is probably the most, I would say, one of the most prolific device manufacturers for Meshtastic, or just, LoRa in general. They've got the T-Echo there. It's got a e-paper display, so it's really good on battery. Then we've got the T-Beam there. I have one of those up here that you can come look at. The T-Deck, that's the T-Deck version 2, or T-Deck Plus, I think it's called. That's a really nice device, especially if you don't want to connect to a phone. So you can run everything with that little keyboard. It's like a BlackBerry. And it's got a full color screen. So I have one of those. I have the older version of that up here. You can come play with that too. And the firmware finally supports that screen in a really good way. So they've really done a good job with that. And they even have a watch. Now I don't have the watch. That's a little much for me. But if you really wanted a watch, you could get one. Oh, and then the price on this stuff, it's like $40 to $100 for those devices. I think the T-Deck Plus is like $70 or $80. Rack wireless. So this is really good if you want to do base stations, in my opinion, because they use a chipset. They use the NRF chipset, which is really good on power, and so you can do solar nodes that last basically forever as long as they have a little bit of sun. It has good power. It has a lot of expansion capabilities. Like there's like 50 modules you can buy for it for temperature, humidity, GPS. Like any number of things you can measure. If you want to do telemetry with these, you got a greenhouse, you want to know what the temperature is, you can throw one of those in there and then just check it from, well, kind of anywhere. As long as you can get connectivity to that node, you can check it. I use the rack for my base station at home. Oh, whoops, what happened? That was weird. Okay. So, it's up in the air with an antenna. Kind of similar to one of the ones I've got up here. And that's been great for how long? I think since around July or August last year, I've had it up. Ran all winter. It's completely disconnected from everything else. It's just on a solar panel. And I had no problems for the entire winter. And that just has some lithium cells inside of it. So they did fine, even in the cold. They also make, if you want kind of a, purpose-built, something you just buy off the shelf and it'll just work. You don't have to do any 3D printing. You don't have to do any, plugging all these little connectors in and all that stuff. The WizMesh Pocket is pretty good. There's a few different devices that these manufacturers make that are a little more just consumer type devices where you just buy it and you're done. So those can be good. They just cost slightly more than the raw bare stuff that I generally buy. If you have a 3D printer, you can make cases for this stuff. There's free designs available and paid designs available. I found the paid designs are slightly better in a lot of ways, and they don't cost very much. A lot of times they're like $9 or something. So sometimes that can be worth it. Seed Studio, these are cool. These are like a credit card size device, and they're almost as thin. You can get them in a wallet, depending on your wallet. They're a little expensive. They're like $40 plus shipping. So you're probably in for $50 at the end of the day. But they run the low power chipset I was talking about. They have GPS inside. They're waterproof. The only real downside is they don't allow an external antenna to be hooked up. So if you're out in the boonies, You know, it may or may not work very well for you compared to something that has a nice big antenna you'd slap on there. So that's kind of an interesting one, not one that I have. Station G2, I got one of these. These are really cool, actually. They have an LNA, so for the ham radio nerds in the room, it cleans up the RX a lot, so you get a lot better reception. They actually have a transmission LNA as well, so like it's pretty nice as far as the punching through noise. If you're in a really noisy environment, or if you're really far from the next node, this actually might be a really good option. And they have the high power amp in there. They kind of push the limits on the amp, which is kind of cool. They are expensive. It's like 110 plus shipping to get this. And it's a guy in not a guy, it's like a very small company in I think it's Hong Kong that makes these. So they're kind of hard to get and they take forever. You know, you're gonna be waiting a month for it. So just, keep that in mind. But if you want one, order it now and you get it in a month. So there's lots of different antennas. I've got a few different examples of this up here. You've got kind of the different categories I've laid out here. There's $5 antennas, they're all right. And, maybe a whip for portable is fine, Then you got $10 to $20 antennas that, they get you about 5 dBi. It's pretty good. That's going to be good for a lot of people, especially if you're doing a base station in a normal place. That's a really good place to be. If you're in a challenging location, maybe you want to punch, further nodes, but give up a little bit of your close nodes. If you don't have any close nodes, it doesn't matter. You can go for a little more of an antenna, $20 to $50, big antenna. Can work really well. One of my neighbors has one of those and it works great for him. So sourcing for antennas, you can hop on Amazon, buy all this stuff, or eBay has a lot of it too. AliExpress, at least until now, you're probably going to get the best deal, but who knows what's going to happen in the next few months. So we'll see. But almost always AliExpress has very, very cheap antennas that do work pretty darn well. So some examples. This one's from AliExpress. It's called I think it's called the Gizont. Yeah, Gizont whip. Just a 20 centimeter and 40 centimeter whip. They're $1 to $7 depending on what deal you get. They're fully flexible. They're always available. They've got hundreds available, no problems. Great for portable nodes. Probably wouldn't recommend for something stationary. I actually run one of these on my truck on my mag mount. Works great. These Zizor antennas, these are pretty good. I ran one of these for a while and I was able to get all the way to Little Blacktail Mountain, which got me down to Coeur d'Alene, which got me to Spokane Valley. So I've talked to 80 miles on that antenna. Pretty darn good. And I think it's $12. So definitely something to look into if you want to do a base station, but they are pretty big, not really suitable for even a mobile because they're pretty tall. It's 40 centimeters, Sorry for not putting freedom units on the slides. Yeah, this is the one my neighbor has. It's 90 centimeters. It's huge. Same downsides. It's big, solid. You can't really run it on a truck unless you want it broken. And they're kind of expensive, 40, 50 bucks, but it does really work for him. And his node is still visible from Coeur d'Alene, which is pretty incredible. I don't even know how he does that because mine's not. So you can make your own antenna if you're, industrious or cheap. Yagis work really well. If you can make a 915 megahertz Yagi or 906 megahertz Yagi, and you want to point it at a certain spot, where the node you want to hit is, that can work great. You can measure them, with any SWR meter, but like nano VNA works really well. I know this is a real technical part, but essentially we're talking about antenna building. So that is an option if you want to get into that sort of thing. This is the wall of shame. This is what you receive with the radio. Now I do have some shameful antennas up here too. But those are basically just for demonstration. I would not run one of these type of antennas long-term. It's totally fine if you want to hook it up and get going when you receive it. But shortly thereafter, you should be looking at an upgrade for your antenna for the $10. It's totally worth it. But they end up in the garbage, in my opinion. They kind of work barely. Okay, yeah, cases. I already kind of covered cases, but yeah, this is some examples of what the cases can look like. That's a case on the left there with a built-in carabiner, which is kind of cool. So if you got a backpack or something, that's really, really nice. And that's for the T-beam. That's a LilyGo T-beam in there. And then on the right, one of those is called the Nibbler, and then the other one I can't remember the name of, but they're both from Zero Fox 3D. Really good designs. And those you can buy the design and print it, or you can buy it directly from him. He actually has a sale right now for 20% off. If you want to take advantage of that. But yeah, the pricing there is pretty accurate. You know, you're looking at 20, 30 bucks shipped for a lot of these cases, and $10 to do it yourself, or free. The one on the left there is all the way on the left. The T-beam case is actually free design on what's it called? Thingiverse. So that solar node right there, it's kind of hard to see with the TV thing, but that box, that white box there it's a waterproof box that houses the radio itself and the batteries. And then you just mount the antenna. That one actually has an very external antenna that's not on the box, but you can also just mount it directly onto the box, and you just glue everything up so it's watertight. That's the exact setup I've had all winter. It's worked great. And that's a solar panel. So that's one of these solar panels. These are relatively inexpensive. I think this cost me $10. It's only 6 watts, but 6 watts in the sun is plenty to keep these batteries charged. As long as you've got some decent sun during the day, a couple hours, 3 hours, something like that. And so, yeah, I would highly recommend that build. That build costs about $100 to do if you buy the recommended equipment. But if you've got some stuff laying around, you might be able to do it for quite a bit cheaper. And this is a video. It's a 24-minute video, step by step, on how to build everything there. And what gear to buy. There's actually a manifest of what to buy. You know, and you put it on a pole mount and forget about it, and it just works. So software, you know, there's firmware. Firmware is what goes on the device. That's what you plug it in, you flash the firmware, right? And then, you know, you might need to upgrade it here and there, depending on what features you want to get. Currently, Meshtastic is very good as far as features go. So it's not terribly often that you might want to do that, but if they add something, you might want to. Then there's client apps. We're talking about Android, iPhone, and technically web browser. You could run it in web browser as well to connect to it and to send messages, receive messages, etc. There's also third-party apps, and I'll get to those in a minute. So this is what the flasher looks like. You know, you pick your device, you pick, it'll auto-pick the firmware version, but you can pick a different one if you want. But the one it picks is usually the one you want to use. You hit flash, click some more buttons. You might need to push some buttons on your device and restart it to get it in the right mode. And then you hit flash, and it just writes the software to it. So pretty straightforward. Sometimes it can be a little bit tricky to get this to work, depending on which device you have. But, you know, there's a really good community out there that's very supportive. You know, I'm not going to go too far into this because it's pretty advanced, but if you want to develop the firmware, you can. This will be in the slides if you want to review it later. It kind of looks like that, somewhat complex. The Android client's really good. So this is kind of the default way that most people use Meshtastic. You get this app, you can install it right from the App Store, or I guess the Play Store is really what I should say. And you can connect over Bluetooth. Now, you can also connect directly over USB if you don't want to use Bluetooth, or you can use TCP, which means networking. You know, you can put your device, if it has Wi-Fi built into it, which quite a few of them do, you can put it directly on a network and connect to it over the network instead of using, you know, a radio to talk to it like Bluetooth does. And so the different pages on here, I'll show pictures of these, but you've got a node list, a channel list, direct messaging, a map, and configuration. The map, and this is kind of an interesting one. The node can be very heavily configured. There's a lot of options as far as privacy, especially. So you can have a node broadcast its location all the time in real time, you know, every 30 seconds if you want to everybody with no encryption. You can do that. I don't think you should, but you can. Or you can make it so it does an approximate location and it like varies where it is in a certain range and only sends that on certain channels. That's much better in my opinion. You can also make it so you have up to 8 channels, if I remember correctly. So you can have like the public channel, you can have your family channel, you can have your road channel, you can have your CDRT channel, and you can have different privacy settings for your location sharing between all of those, you know. So maybe I don't want Ron to know where I am, but I want my family to, you know, that's something you can absolutely do. So the direct messaging is public key encryption, which is great. That's kind of what you're, you know, you go to your bank website and you log in, that's what it's using. There's also shared keys. PSK is pre-shared key. And so what that means is, you know, if I want, you know, to have the CDRT channel, I can make that channel and I can give everybody in the CDRT the key, and you program it in your phone or you scan my phone to get the code, you know, the key, and then we're all encrypted, and, you know, anybody without the key can't read it. So that's what pre-shared key is. And then this is kind of a newer feature. If you got a node on a mountaintop, like let's say I go up to Black Mountain and I put one of these up there, as long as I can talk to it with Meshtastic, like as long as I can hit that, I can actually change all of the settings on it if I have the right key. So that's a feature of this direct messaging thing that they did. So, you know, when I make that mountain node, I can put in there, allow this key, whoever has this key, allow them to change the settings, but nobody else. And so that's kind of a really powerful thing, because before that existed, there was a really hokey way of doing it. And then there was the direct way of doing it where you just drive to it. So I'm glad that's fixed.
We slash upgrade over the air.
Yes, over-the-air updates do exist. Depends on the hardware. Very good question, by the way. I hadn't covered that. The rack hardware seems to have a bug with that. Heltec, I think, works great. And I think the LilyGo stuff works great. But just be aware that the rack might have an issue with that. Any other questions real quick before I move on? All right. Yeah, this is what the Android app currently looks like. I took these screenshots yesterday. This is from my node, which is called Grease Lightning. But you can see there's a map there. Here, can I just pick this up? Oh, there we go. There's a map there, and this is kind of what our area looks like right now for Meshtastic. Got a couple familiar names in here. Lee has one. And then we got Raven up there. That's one of my neighbors. Knox is my neighbor with the giant antenna. And then TCAB and some of these other ones, those are my nodes. But yeah, even there's even stuff in town now. You know, people are starting to pick this up. So, you know, that's just kind of our local area. But once we get another link down here, which will eventually happen, these will be connected further south. So hopefully soon. Okay.
Like south of the.
I don't think I can.
So can,
Oh.
can we repeat the question? If I don't get to them with a mic, maybe you will kind of repeat the question.
I'll try to remember. Yeah.
Yeah, I watched this on the video and I couldn't hear the first time, so it's good we're doing this. So I live in Segal,
Okay.
and what I want to do is I want to add to the infrastructure. I don't even know if there is infrastructure there.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious, obviously north of the lake looks really good. What does south of the lake look like? Do you know? Do we need to add like a mesh node on top of one of the nearby mountains? Basically, I want to know, what is my experience when my node comes online? Am I going to be really disappointed or really, really excited?
So that's a really good question. And I drove south pretty recently with Meshtastic on, just to kind of survey what was going on. That was probably a few weeks ago. And what I noticed was there was a few around Athol, but not a lot in Segal. I'm assuming that's still the case. I don't know why. But you know, the one node that we had near Segal was on Little Blacktail, and that, you know, that losing that was a big loss for all of us, because before that I had 40, 50, 60 different nodes in my node list, and I had, you know, the mapping and CDA was huge, tons of nodes down there, and then even in Spokane we were getting over there pretty good. So yeah, it's probably a good way to go. Yeah, he said for him, he could get a Yagi antenna plus an LNA. If you get a Yagi antenna, you just have to make sure you point it
North.
the right direction.
Right, point north.
But then it's not going to go south unless
Yeah.
it comes off the back, which can happen. But,
Yeah.
you know, there's a couple ways of doing it. The higher, the better is generally
with OTA update, if we can flash over the air,
Yeah.
I think we can potentially get Tall Mountains, get some remote administratable nodes up there and
Totally.
expand. That's what I'm hoping to do.
Yeah, and I
Eventually.
mean, there's even talk of putting this on certain towers, various places. So I'm
Yes.
hoping that all comes to fruition at some point.
Awesome.
Anyway, moving on from the map. So on the middle screen there, that's the node list. A lot of that stuff is clickable. What I really like about what they did in recent updates is they have these numbers. So it'll say SNR 6.5 dB, RSSI -55. I know that's all gobbledygook to most of you, but you know, it's green. So they made it really easy to figure out if it's good or not. Didn't used to be color coded. It'll actually just say signal good. Great. Then we got K7AVR, you know, he's not so good. Yeah. So we'll have to, I wish he was here. Anyway, his node, I can't get a very good signal to, but that is surprisingly still usable. -120 dBm is about the lowest you can go and still get text through. But that can also, so that's a direct link actually. It'll say hops away, like this El Ricardo one, if it's going through a different node. So there's something to keep in mind. But yeah, Rick is down here somewhere. So even if I can't even if I can't talk to Lee directly, it can just go through Rick because I have a good signal to Rick.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Comment. Personally.
Person, I don't know.
Well, no, we live on about 2,900 feet at the
Mhm.
end of Wellington.
Mhm.
And we would have a, probably you wouldn't need a huge antenna to hit even Lee, probably down the Selly Valley, we could probably hit pretty easy, but it's still going to be you guys getting up to that node if I had a node there, right?
Well, yeah, and so if you're kind of on the outskirts, which sounds like you probably are, the one you're going to want is the one that's closest to you and is connected to the rest of the mesh. So like my node, for instance, this node Knox here is well connected. So as long as you can hit one of those, just even one, doesn't matter which one it is, you're in the whole thing.
Then, and the middle would tell you if you can, what nodes are good or not.
Correct. So you might have, you know, maybe you'll just see Lee and it'll be signal bad. But even if that happens, you'll probably still start to get populated list, even if you don't have a very good signal. It's kind of surprising how resilient it is.
Oh, there you go.
Any more questions before I move on?
I have one, Eric.
Yeah.
So just to recap real quick, you can download this app,
Hmm.
and it's called Meshtastic.
Sure is.
And download it, and then you got it.
Yep, that's it.
Thank you.
Yep, and you can get it from GitHub as well. You know, you can just download the APK and install it, sideload it, if you're familiar with that sort of a process. But it is in the App Store. It's also on F-Droid. There's a lot of ways to get it, which is kind of great. So you're on a de-Googled phone, it works perfectly on a de-Googled phone. Third thing, that is basically a channel list. And we've got, you know, 3 different channels there, like I was talking about. The RPDL is our road channel. Fighter Town is one of my friends that we have a channel together, testing some stuff out. And so that QR code has a lot of the information you would use to join those channels, which is kind of cool. Then we've got these screens. So basically, when you start the app and you want to connect to your device, you end up at this screen over here. You can see it's the gear on the top right. That just turns green. You tap that. And then you set up your node through here. So you just have to set the region. That's step 1. And then you open the hamburger menu. That's 3 dots at the top right. And then go to radio configuration. Then you set up all the other things like the name of your radio. You can set up, you know, what the 4 letters are that show up. So the 4 letters thing is real quick back. These. So 6F7C, Rick, Lee1, GRSD. You can set those. That's called the short name. You can set the GPS settings, channel settings, all the radio settings. So that's, you know, that's something that if you're going to get into this, that's something to get familiar with is all the different settings, and probably plan on spending like an hour or 2 figuring that out. But, you know, the basic settings, there's only like 5 or 6 you really need, and you can set those up pretty quick. So Middle screen here, that's what the chat rooms look like. That's like the chat list. So your DMs and your rooms are both going to be listed there. So whatever channels you have, they'll show up with the numbers 0, 1, 2. And then I have a, a ping from Raven there. So that's kind of what that looks like for a direct message. And you can go into each one of those. When you go in, that's actually the pilot getting Axel flying over Sandpoint. So cool. So, he flew over on the 16th at 7:55 a.m., sent a couple messages, and I didn't see it until way later. But that kind of shows you that asynchronous idea where I think this was probably like a week later when I checked my node, and that was stored in there and it forwarded it to me, which is kind of fun. So Apple, if you run an iPhone, I don't, but if you do, it has a really slick interface. They did a really good job. I think it's a completely different developer that did this. But the features are all basically the same. Sometimes they'll, depending on what month it is, they might have slightly different features, but they're pretty good about it. And it also works if you have a Mac, like a desktop or a laptop, you can actually run this directly on there as an iOS app, which is really cool. I've done that on a friend's computer. It worked great. So it ends up looking like this, really pretty node list. They had the signal level thing way before Android did, so good on them. You can actually see everybody's battery levels, which is kind of funny. So you can let people know their battery's dying. And then, it shows your own, or it shows the node like information screen. If you tap one of those, you can see all the different metrics. This is something I forgot to talk about. If you go into this metric screen, even on Android, and they have, let's say they have a thermometer or they have a humidity sensor on their node, environment metrics shows you graphs and raw data of like, whenever it logged the data. So you can actually see what the temperature was, and you can pick if you want to share that or not. It's kind of cool. So that's how you would use that. And then you can see that map there. I don't know where that map's from. I'd grab these from the internet somewhere. But like that's kind of what it looks like on the iPhone map. So now I mentioned email earlier. So you can actually connect this. I mentioned you can connect it to a computer. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
On that last slide you were just showing, does that imply that's one large group, or is that saying that there's multiple people individually separated that are sharing the same mesh?
So you're talking about the shading there?
Correct.
Yeah, the blue shading is kind of it's trying to show you the coverage area roughly. It's not perfect. You can see there's other circles there too. So that's showing different, different coverage categories for different nodes and trying to show a coverage area. It's not very good though. I basically don't pay attention to those.
Got it.
What's up? Oh, okay. That'll work. Oh,
Just as an example, that map is from Ogden, Utah,
oh,
down into the Provo and South area. So you're talking 80, 90 miles. It's so narrow because you've got mountains
okay.
straight to the right. But just as an example, that's the distance that they're showing.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that because I had no idea where that came from, but that makes sense. And like it's very similar to what we have here with our corridor, the 95.
Yeah.
That's basically what our map looked like as well when we were well connected. So it'll look like that again soon, I'm sure. Let's go back here. So anyway, I was talking about email. So you can hook this up to a computer. Now, you can just poke around on it with the computer and use it as a user interface. That's fine. You can also write software for it, which can do basically anything. So this software is called the TC2BBS. It's written by the Comms channel. It's a very good YouTube channel. If you want to learn about this stuff, excellent, excellent resource. He developed this little Python program. You run it and it interacts with your radio. It sends and receives messages in an automated way. You can do mail. So if you want to leave a message for somebody and have them pick it up tomorrow, as long as they're willing to go log into it and check their mail, then it'll work. It's very similar to the old bulletin board services, if you're old enough, like me, that you used to dial into and cause trouble when you were a kid, or young adult. And so that's kind of having a resurgence, which is kind of cool. But, you know, community bulletin board, if you want to post, you know, events or news or whatever, you can use it for that. There's a channel directory that can, you know, if you have a bunch of channels, you can kind of share information about those and then optionally share the key material so people could join them, which is kind of cool. Statistics, wall of shame, so that's low battery levels. You gotta have that. And then fortune teller. So if you want a fortune, you can get a little fortune, you know, for the day. So that's kind of a cool thing. Oh, whoops. So I'm going to talk about ATAK. How many people in the room have heard of ATAK? Okay, like 6-ish. So it's the Android Tactical. Oh no, Android Team Awareness Kit. I always get that wrong. I always want T to be tactical. Yeah, the Android Team Awareness Kit is basically something that was developed for the military. It's developed, I think, for the Army actually. And but it was put in the public domain because of the funds that were used to develop it. So we have this very powerful software that you can just get. It's kind of a pain. You have to sign up for a website to download it, which is kind of annoying. But you can get it and completely free. You put it on your Android phone and you put your Meshtastic node into TAK mode. And you can use all these features just over Meshtastic with no other networking. At least once you download the maps and imagery and stuff into your phone, you can use it in a very offline fashion. This could be great for if you want to go hunting, you want to go hiking, you want to go camping and hiking around up around your campsite. Any number of things this would be really good at. And it will run on a pretty old phone. I have 2 phones up here that are just old phones that I've run through over the years. They're Pixel 4s, so you could pick them up for less than $100, no problem. And slam ATAK on there, get a little radio, and then you can run around with these devices or drive with them or whatever you want to do. You can do waypoints, targets, team locations, text messaging. You can do polygons. You can do measurements. You can you can share every single one of these with your whole team. You can run this in encrypted mode, so then all the comms are encrypted that it uses, so then nobody can see what you're doing. You can do ops planning. It's kind of insane. So like, you know, here's see all those icons on the top? That's like a quarter of the stuff you can do with it. That's like the quick access. So, you know, you can see there, we got a bunch of different labels. We got a circle around the user there. You got a call sign in the bottom right. Everybody gets a call sign. Everybody has a team. You can have like 8 color teams. And you can be, you know, there's different roles. So you can be like a team manager, you know, different, you know, permissions that you might have. So anyway, it's pretty cool. And then they integrated in the chat. So the ATAK has a built-in chat feature that even has voice. So you can do voice to text and text to speech. And that will all run over Meshtastic after it goes to text, obviously, which is really cool. I've used this a little bit, just playing around, but I'd like to get into it more. So
Is that all offline or online?
This is all offline if you download the imagery. So like the maps, you can download those locally. It has a whole feature for that where you pick what you want, you hit download, and it goes all in the device. You turn Wi-Fi off. Yeah, it's not too bad. Like I think for a Sandpoint area, it was like 100 megabytes for the map. You know, it depends on how zoomed in you want it. Yeah, the imagery, yeah. Let's see. Yeah, so that's kind of a fun thing you can do with it.
Let me grab this question real quick.
Oh, sure. Oh, no problem. I just didn't see it.
Got a couple actually.
First of all, as far as the geolocation, I assume that comes from the device, the cell phone, the GPS. The Meshtastic hardware typically doesn't have a GPS receiver, right?
It does have, yeah.
It does.
Yeah, the Meshtastic, you can do it either way.
No, I know the GPS receivers are very high power consumption, right? So that's a trade-off we'd have to.
So it's funny you mentioned that because right here hanging, that little guy right there, that's GPS.
Okay.
And they barely take anything really for those models. They're not terribly powerful or anything.
Right.
But they do work, especially if you have an open view of the sky, they will work great.
Okay.
In buildings, it's a little sketch.
So can the ATAK then take the geolocation from the Meshtastic, or does it choose, or can you set that?
I think you can force it to take it from the phone if you really want it to.
Okay, interesting.
But yeah, I'm pretty sure that's one of the settings is you pick where the GPS comes from.
So that leads to my follow-up question. I'll promise not to hijack your talk.
No, go for it.
If I want to, so say I want to have geolocation, I want to use ATAK, I've got some hunting buddies and I want to keep in touch with my base camp or whatever.
Yep.
What of the devices that you I guess, have experience with would you recommend for that application?
I'd
Considering
use
GPS.
Heltex.
Heltex?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Like they're small, they're low power, they're cheap. You can put one together for like $40, $50, depending on what features you want. Those GPS chips like that, they're $10. So like, you know, we're not talking big money to put those together. The rack stuff, it would be really good as well. The only issue with that is the modules are slightly more expensive,
Right.
you know, because they're kind of like a custom form factor. Where a lot of the stuff for the Heltex, you know, well, the Heltex aren't as expandable, but you have GPS.
Right. GPS. Yeah, it's big. Okay. Thank you.
No problem. Yeah, that's a good question. And like, you know, you get into stuff like, I want to run it with a battery. I want to run it with solar. You know, which devices support that? And it does vary a fair bit. So, you know,
Eric, just throwing it out there, there is an iOS port of ATAK called ATAK.
there is, and there's also something called WinTAK for Windows. So yeah, that's a very good point. They've done a really good job making things cross-platform. There's also an ATAK server. If you want to have it internet connected, super powerful. And what you can do is you can have your ATAK server have all the ops information. You know, if you're running fire or whatever, you can have fire maps. You can do all kinds of stuff with it. Have that all in one place. Everybody connects to it. You know, you hire someone new. They can connect to it, download all the information, all the waypoints, everything into their phone, and then disconnect. And then keep this on for in the field. If there's no cell service or whatever, you can still use this. So
Eric,
yeah,
I had a quick question. So if I'm out hunting with my buddies, I got 4 or 5 guys out in the field.
Yeah.
Could I use this setup with the GPS and everything? Would we be able to see real time where my other partners are at?
Yep. So like this map over here, if you just sit there and watch it, those little dots will move around, like when people move. So yeah, that is absolutely for that. Yeah. You can turn off your location broadcast. Yeah, totally.
What's the refresh rate? So say, for example, if you guys are out there for a whole weekend, are you going to refresh every minute, every 2 minutes?
That's configurable in ATAK. I can't remember what the default is, but I think it's every minute. You can turn it down, turn it up. I think you might be able to turn up to 30 seconds. I'm not sure if you can turn it higher than that. There's also limitations with Meshtastic. So if you're using Meshtastic as your backbone for this, there's a certain amount of time where, you know, you can't do it every second because it's going to take longer than that for the ACKs and everything to come through. So you probably want to turn it down a bit on that. 30 seconds might work. I haven't tried it that fast. I think I've done it 1 minute before. It's been fine. Any other questions? What's up?
Turn off your location.
I need to have one on each side of the room.
If you turn off your location transmitter, are you able to be detected by other means?
That's a great question. If you're concerned about like fox hunting, like if you're worried about someone finding you, depending on what you're doing, this may or may not be a good solution for you. If you want to be connected to the mesh all the time, it's going to do traffic occasionally. There's no node info broadcasts. So like that's configurable. You can turn that off or you can have it like once a day. But you know, yes, the answer is it's just like any other radio. If someone knows what to look for and they have the right kind of antenna for fox hunting, they can find you if it's on and if it's broadcasting.
So could you pollute the environment with different mesh nodes?
Yeah, you can make it noisier.
Okay.
For sure. And the other thing you can do is you can make it so you might have your node that you use at your house, and you might have another node that it goes through, maybe configured as a repeater or something like that. There's ways of kind of dealing with that. But if they know who you are, if they know which node you're talking from, they can fox hunt you, just like any other radios like that. Yeah, exactly. Anything else before I move on? All right. This is one of my last slides. I just wanted to talk real quick about LoRaWAN. So if you want something that's a little more of a replacement for Wi-Fi, but still uses this technology, that exists too. It's called LoRaWAN. It has real internet packets, real internet routing. If you want to do stuff like that, you know, so like this device here would work on LoRaWAN to connect RS-485. So if you got an inverter with RS-485, you want to control it remotely, let's say over the internet, you can absolutely do that that it does exist. It's a little more complex to set up, but you know, that's something to consider if you want to delve real deep into this sort of thing. Or if you want to use it for an industrial or commercial purpose, this is kind of where you would start looking, is devices like that. So anyway, if you have more questions, you can always email me. I'm happy to talk about this stuff. It's fun. So,
Does anybody else have any questions on Meshtastic?
So if we have this hooked into coming into our phone or our computer,
yep.
what kind of security concerns do we have? I know it's kind of text, but would there be other security concerns now that you're kind of coming into the network through this method?
So that's a good question. There's your normal concerns of the app security itself, as far as who's releasing the app, you know, but as far as I've seen, the organization that puts it out is pretty good, pretty above board. I haven't seen anything to worry about there. The permissions the app gets, at least on Android, are somewhat minimal. It doesn't need microphone or anything like that. So, you know, you can always take, you know, if you have the right Android OS, you can take permissions off as much as you want to. But it will be able to talk to Bluetooth and discover Bluetooth devices, so that, you know, if that's a risk for you, then might not be a good idea to use the app. But in general, I haven't seen anything concerning from that standpoint. The radios themselves, like the LoRa radios, if you have one at your house, I can't access your phone. All I can do is send messages and your phone might display them, you know. So that's pretty minimal risk in my opinion, but it's a good question.
So a lot of this conversation has been based on like a home base. Let's say if 15 of us decided to go on the other side of the hill, going to Kellogg,
Yeah.
set up a repeater on top of the hill. Everyone amongst that group would still be able to communicate, right?
Yeah.
As long as you could see the node, I mean.
Yeah, if you can all see the repeater.
Yep.
Absolutely. Or even if there's no repeater, you can do it completely disorganized and the devices should work pretty well, depending on your terrain. You know, if you're on flat ground, it's going to work great. If some of you are up higher than others, they're just going to become de facto repeaters at that point, because everybody's getting to see their broadcasts. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. Oh, yeah. Need more mics.
Waiting, fly one over there.
Yes, I did. I did that on purpose. I keep hearing about Meshcore. I don't know if it's a competing project. I know the open source projects tend to fork a lot. What is Meshcore? Is it compatible with Meshtastic? Is it something we should consider? Maybe speak about that for a bit.
Excellent question. I believe I should let someone else address that.
Yeah, so we do have another presenter following that's going to present on Meshcore. So as soon as we're done with Eric, we're going to bring him up.
Yeah, there you go.
Your antenna, we're gonna tune it at what, 906, you said?
So normally slot 20, which is 906.675, I think, or somewhere in there. That's where you're going to really want to make sure you have good SWR. Like I would say less than 1.5 is a good goal for most of these antennas. Less than 2 is fine, but anything more than 2 to 1 is not great. So if you got the device, the equipment to be able to do that, to be able to see what your antenna is tuned at, that's kind of what you're shooting for. Some of them are actually tuned for 915, and it's like a big ramp at 915. So like 906 doesn't even work that well with some of those antennas. Some of them have a pretty flat response over the whole ISM band. It just depends on what you get. And it doesn't really matter what you pay. Like the cheap ones sometimes work great, and sometimes the more expensive ones don't work as well. It just depends. So
Who's using 433?
oh, I didn't even mention that. So there is an amateur mode. So if you have a ham license, you can configure these to be in amateur mode. You're not allowed to do encryption anymore, but you can use the 433 megahertz band. And you also usually have to get, I believe you have to get a separate device. Some of these chips will do 433 and 915, but I don't think that, I can't remember if all of them do. I haven't delved into the 433 stuff very much.
So it's not popular here.
It's not, I haven't really seen many people using it as far as I have heard, and I've never personally tried it. I like the encryption and the anonymity of it, so I'm more
Yeah.
on that side of it.
I like 433. It'd probably travel further.
It could, yeah, if you get the right antenna, especially, and you could get a purpose-built 400, 433 antenna at that point.
So then, let's say average distance
Hmm.
on a traveling node on the 95. Are you broadcasting a mile or better?
Oh yeah, easily. No, when I've been on 95, I've hit Coeur d'Alene from my truck because
With
it's a straight shot, basically.
with a exterior or mobile mount?
Yeah, with a mobile mounted mag mount antenna, yeah, but not even a big one, like a whip, like basic whip.
And that's the Coeur d'Alene is in elevation, is that?
Yeah,
what-
that one's up high. It's called MTB2.
So that's not normal. So
Yeah, that's
So-
like a special case.
I'm looking for an average.
At an average, I mean, 5 to 10 miles is probably a good estimate, for what you're going to get on the highway.
That's
It really depends on so many different things. Depends on who you're talking to, how high up they are, if they're on the road too. But if you're 5 to 10 miles away, you're probably gonna be okay
okay. That's better.
on a highway.
Better than I thought.
Yeah. If it's a really turny highway, it's gonna be like a mile,
Yeah, yeah,
depends.
sure. Are you gonna so there's some mesh networks that are somebody starts a website and they start it for the area. Is that anybody got any interest in that?
I mean,
For like
yeah,
North Idaho mesh?
I think there was someone who's trying to do that down in Spokane, I think, for a while, but I'm not sure what ever happened with that.
That's too far.
I know. I'm giving you an example. Like it's
Yeah, yeah.
you can kind of make a private group if you want to, like that.
You're not toying with that idea?
I have my own community groups.
Donations, maybe?
What do you say?
Donations?
I'm not going to take donations. No, I mean, there's Longfast, which is like the public channel, and people talk on there. People who fly over are on that because they don't have our keys. And then there's the other channels that are more private and community focused or family focused, and that's kind of where I am with it. I mean, you can use it however you want, but you could make like there's a couple like groups around that might benefit from having their own channel, for instance, and allowing members to join and stuff like that.
Sure.
Just depends on what you want to do.
And then last one, do you have, so when you get your HealthTech 3 or whichever
Mhm.
device you're gonna use?
Yeah.
There's kind of a basic configuration for it?
Well, they come with a
and I-
firmware that's like trash, so you basically have to flash it right away.
Right, but I don't know if there's different settings for like different areas, like hilly areas, tree areas.
Well, that's where that slide I had a long
Like,
time
you know,
ago.
you wanna increase your dB on your output. or-
Yeah, did you
so
see? You
it's
saw
like-
the slide where I had long fast,
Yeah,
and I was talking about how some people were using short fast in cities and
Right,
stuff. They removed the very long slow setting, I think, but I think very long fast still might exist. So, like, if you're in a really challenging environment, you might want to try that. You're not going to be able to talk to anybody in the normal mesh, but you can make your own mesh with that setting, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
So that's a possibility. I haven't looked into whether there's a good way to bridge, but there probably is. You could probably bridge over serial and have like a very long fast over here and a long fast over here and have them relay. But I haven't tried that yet. You just need a computer to do it in basic Python script.
okay.
So
I just thought of one more. So which board are you recommending for the beginner?
the HealthTech, it's kind of hard to go wrong. I like the T114s because they're so low power and you can make just a handheld device that lasts a day or two on a battery. For the other devices, they're going to be in the hours, unplugged. They're a little higher power, which is kind of annoying. But for a mobile radio, that might be okay. Like it's in your truck, you could get the Lily Goes and they'll do fine. The racks are great for a base station. So, depending on what the application is, if you want something to work as a base and it can run solar, it can run on a battery, charge the battery properly. The HealthTech's kind of hard to beat. in my opinion.
I just got one yesterday.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's $30 from Amazon in one day.
Yeah, great.
Next month, that might be $60, or it might not be available.
Yeah. Limited time only. Call
Do we
now.
have any other questions? So I guess one thing that I will do is I will look into seeing if there is a group on social media or something, a local group that might be dealing with Meshtastic, and if there isn't, maybe I can create one so that people can start talking.
I know someone who has one. And he's about to talk.
Okay.
So
If there's no more questions on Meshtastic, I'd like to give Eric a big round of applause.
thank you very much.
Our next presenter on Meshcore is John. He had to work late, so. So. Either you can hold the mic or you can stand at the podium, whichever one you're comfortable with.
Okay, I'll probably, yeah, just hold the mic.
Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna write some stuff. Right.
Yep.
Like I said, yeah,
Slides,
I didn't.
right?
I didn't expect, yeah, I didn't expect to do a presentation today, so I just brought some show and tell stuff and then answer questions. Like you mentioned Meshcore. So yeah, it is a branch off of Meshtastic. Just my name is John Richards to start there. I live in Carywood, so north of Athol, between here and Coeur d'Alene. And I've been using Meshtastic for a year. I used it, tried building, I built devices. There was a couple, I love the rack 4631. I got an order of like I think I did like 24 of them, just handing them out to people or people that would buy them, and I'd build them and train them how to use them. So I really love Meshtastic. That's where it got started. Like 2 years ago, I bought everything that was coming out, and just getting my hands on it. I don't code. I'm not technical. I just in layman's terms, I can explain things just by how to use it, And I just love the fact that we can communicate without using our cell phones, which are connected to the grid. And if it's connected to the grid, then it's getting stored in some database somewhere. So anyways, that's the reasoning behind me being enthusiastic about this. It's just a hobby, but it's also a mission of mine to spread this spread this technology. Because I think privacy, it's part of our First Amendment, and I wish there was more of that. So Meshcore, it's really I don't know, like 4 or 5 months ago, like just a couple guys are like, there's this and this and this. Okay, so I love Meshtastic. I'm not when I describe the differences between Meshcore and Meshtastic, please don't. I'm not discouraging you from using Meshtastic. And yeah, and don't get me wrong, there are Meshtastic's been around longer. The UI, the user interface is a lot easier to use. It's had a lot more work. It's had a lot more time behind it. Meshcore is just getting off the ground. They just came out like every month. They come out with new, upgrade to the user interface, to the product, to how efficient it is. And they're building off of, so the biggest thing from my understanding is Meshtastic. So I should do it in shorthand. So MT and then MC. Meshtastic does flood routing. So each device, did you talk about that at all? Offline?
Yeah, so the way I describe it is it's like everybody's screaming in a room at each other.
Right.
It's like everybody's screaming in a room at each other. That's kind of the flood routing idea. And the way I describe Meshcore is like everybody kind of nominates somebody to speak and to like rebroadcast. So it's not quite as insane and noisy.
Yeah. So like I if you're using ham or if you're using just normal radios, if you have two people pushing, PTT, and they're trying to talk to each other while they're pushing that, that's what's going on. There's two radios, and at the same time, that message goes nowhere. And so with flood routing, that's kind of like that's the danger. Like Meshtastic, it doesn't always go through it. It's not as reliable as Meshcore, because Meshcore, it's not a flood routing device. It's not pinging. It's not. So each device is like, hey, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here, and then it's just so like bandwidth. So that's another way of describing it. So you only have like so much bandwidth. There's only so much signal that can get out there. And so if Meshtastic, if the devices are all pinging and like screaming, like it just fills up that bandwidth. And then another person wants to talk to another person, and there's nowhere to, it can't get through to the other radio. I don't know if that makes sense. So Meshcore, it's very manual. When you want to be discovered, if I have a radio, it's the other, so you have two radios, it's not going to see that other radio until I manually set, hey, I'm going to advertise myself, and then it will advertise itself and then see the other radio. If that makes sense. Yeah. So flood routing is one.
Call it path routing.
Path routing?
Yeah.
Path routing. Oh, I like that. Okay. I didn't know what to call that. Path routing. Any questions before I move on from this? Okay. So the other difference is so Meshcore, we have a BBS feature, and that stands for bulletin board system. And so they call them room servers. And I think that this is like the jewel of Meshcore. I feel like it's just really fun to use. So you'll have a device, and let me put lock here. That's a lock. Yeah, my art skills. Okay. So if I have a radio here, I have a network, right? You can set this up as a room server, and each person has to log in to this room server. And so when you log in, you can text into this server and you send a message. It will store that message. And then when this person logs in, it will send that message to that person. And when that person logs in, it will send that message to that person. So it will store the messages or the text, and then it send it to you when you log in. Yes, go ahead.
So if something were going on in, say, a wildfire in your community, everybody in the Meshcom would just log in and get updates, but not automatically. They would log in to get their updates versus Meshtastic. Would you have to log in?
I think that. Try to answer.
Yeah.
I think the distinction is with Meshtastic, if your device is offline, like let's say it's just turned off, you're not, and you turn it on, and you've missed messages in your channel, let's say, you're probably not going to get them, unless there is a way of store and forwarding, but it's very difficult to use. With Meshcore, what he's describing is when your device turns back on and logs into the room server, it will relay all the messages that you've missed, which is a very powerful feature. And one of the reasons that Meshcore right now is pretty darn cool. So anyway, did I get that right, John?
Yeah, totally. Thank you. Yeah, that's the cool part. Like when I use Meshtastic and I'm trying to text my wife, I wasn't sure if her device was on or off. You know, like I'm trying to talk to someone. Are they online? They offline? How was their device at? You know, did their battery die? This way, their battery could be dead, and then they could charge it. They could find out that their device was down, charge it, log into this room server, and get the messages that they missed. Meshtastic, you will not see your messages. Like if someone's trying to send them to you, you won't see those messages come through. Yeah.
Want this one?
Probably operator error. No worries.
So you talk about logging in. What I'm a little unsure about. So I understand that you're taking a node and you're making that a room server. So that's acting as a storage device for messages. People log in. Does that mean they need to be within? I mean, we're talking logging
Line
over
of sight.
Bluetooth, line of sight.
Hmm.
So essentially, can you log in through another mesh node, or does it have to be through another means, such as Bluetooth, Ethernet, Wi-Fi, etc.?
Sorry, I'm actually gonna hand these out for you guys just to get your hands on these. So these, have any of you seen the T-Decks? So these are called T-Deck Pluses. LilyGo makes a bunch of LoRa devices, and this is one of their newer ones. Before we would have to buy the board, 3D print cases, you know, install the battery, buy the battery. But now they made it a lot simpler. They knew what we wanted, and they're like, let's just build it all in one. You know, they had so it comes with the battery. I think they just started like selling them with external antennas. Like these ones, I've had to like just go in and modify them so I could put external antenna. But here, I'm gonna hand these out. Oh, I got one right here. Sorry. I was trying to turn these on. Go ahead. Can you repeat your question?
Yeah,
Or-
no problem. So
I'm gonna hand these out.
my question is related to the whole idea of a room server with
Yeah.
Meshcore. So you have one node that under Meshtastic, it would just rebroadcast information to its environment. But in Meshcore, it's acting now as a room server, essentially a storage mechanism for messages.
Correct.
You have peripheral nodes in the vicinity of that room server. Can you use those peripheral nodes to log in, or do you need to be like using another means, such as Wi-Fi, Bluetooth? How do you, I guess the question is, how do you log into a room server using Meshcore? Is it through other mesh devices, or is it through Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, like line of sight, meaning I can see it with my eyeballs, not necessarily my radio antenna? That's
Yeah.
my question.
Good question. So, just an example, I have my Meshcore device installed, and I can go, okay, and I made this into a server. This is a room server / repeater. And you'll configure it, you can put a name. I call mine the living room. You know, if it's a room server, I have a mud room one, you know, anyways. So I have the living room. I'm gonna go in with a password. It's going to connect to this room server. And now I'm into that room.
So, but that
I'm
device
kidding.
you're holding is a TDEC, is that right? So essentially that antenna, is that a LoRa antenna? Is that,
Correct.
okay.
It's a 915 megahertz.
So you're logging in through the mesh then.
Yes.
Can you log in through the mesh through multiple hops, or does it have to be a single hop?
I'm not understanding.
Server. So if you have room server, client, you. Can you
Yes.
talk to the room server
Yes.
through the client.
Yeah.
Okay, so if that's true, this is super powerful.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's my question.
Sorry, I didn't understand your question. Yeah. Does anybody want to just handle this? Anybody interested? Okay. We'll get out of here. I got another one. These also have their own GPS and a map feature. So I can see other nodes just on this all-in-one device. Yes, go ahead.
Is the data on the server itself encrypted? When are your messages?
From my understanding, yes.
Very good. Thank you.
Meshcore is a little bit different also because there are some paywalls. So maybe a downside is I think I had the lid off long. So if I want the full feature of this device and to use maps, I do have to pay $8 to use that feature. It's not extravagant, I don't think. Just $8. And he'll give you a code. The guy that's coding this, or doing the work behind that, he's just asking $8 to unlock that feature, which I've unlocked 2 of them, and I've tried it. I've driven around with this, and it's pretty accurate. It just follows me around just like a normal phone would. So another, I really like the all-in-one devices in that I just have to charge this, other than like now I have to charge this and a phone, you know. So I feel like this is where it's gonna go. I would recommend if you guys are looking into this, getting like these all-in-one devices, and then like you said, the rack 4631s. These are super efficient. There's one in here. It will last 10 days on a battery charge. I had this one up on Blacktail, like 4,800 feet up. And
I said, there it is. I was talking about that.
yeah. Did you talk about the distance I was getting?
Well, I talked about how I could go 80 miles.
Yeah. Yep. So this guy, though it's not very big, I hit it up into it in a tree, and yeah, I was 4 lane, almost Spokane, and I was able to text off this thing, and I have 16. I have 16 of these batteries in there, and it lasted 100 days, and that's without any solar input.
You didn't have solar.
I didn't even have solar. It was just 100 days. This guy could live for 100 days, and that was on Meshtastic. That was Meshtastic. I imagine Meshcore is going to be more efficient because it's not pinging all the time. And solar input, since it takes such little power, it's so power efficient. You don't need a big solar panel. You could use something like this. There's like a USB port, waterproof it, stick it up in a tree, or on a high a high hill or mountain. So another cool thing is like these boards are so small. Everybody has solar lights. I've taken apart this solar light.
Yep.
And they have batteries inside them. It's like equipped for a LoRa device. Take it apart, put a LoRa device in there. It's the same voltage, and you can stick that up in a tree, and then have like an antenna sticking. This is a work in progress. I'm still working on that one. Yeah. Mesh. Any questions? So yes, go ahead.
Okay, on your server, somebody maintains that, so they're gonna have to keep shoving batteries or have it in the solar all the time. Now, if you have a server in your place, then I put a server in mine. I turn my units off. Does your server tell my server messages so I can ping to my server and retrieve my messages?
Like, can you federate?
I don't know. I've never
One
tried that.
server to another server, do they talk?
I don't think so, but I've never. I don't know. I'd have to ask on that about that. Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, go ahead.
So Meshtastic Meshcore, do they communicate with each other?
Not at the moment. I think they are working on that. I've heard. Yeah,
So-
go ahead.
Does Meshcore work with ATAK?
Not at the moment, no. No. But it's developing quickly. I imagine, there's people that get involved and do that sort of thing. Yeah, go ahead.
So, I'm not sure where it's going to go from here, because right now they're both kind of on a great track, I think. Meshtastic's adding some good features. Meshcore is adding some really great features. Do you see it as kind of a Windows and Linux type thing where it's going to be a pick one? Or do you think they're going to reunify?
I don't know.
Because you're more connected than I am with Meshcore, so I'm on the outskirts of it right now.
I haven't heard talk of that. Like,
Okay.
I've heard like the option of switching between the two.
Right.
And which I have done. You can do a launch. I want to say, so like when I start my device, it will like, do I pick Meshcore or do I pick Meshtastic? I can use either one.
That's like a boot menu.
Yeah, boot menu. Yeah,
Sweet.
which I've done. I know that works. Huh?
Like TID radio, you can launch.
Oh, there you go.
Separate one. Okay.
Well, I guess my follow-up question is, do you know if anybody's done a serial bridge between Meshtastic and Meshcore? So you could have like a Meshtastic channel federated with a room server on Meshcore and talk to each other,
I haven't not heard that. No.
because that'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, that would be cool. Yeah.
So I got a really quick question as far as you mostly answered it. I think well, let me just ask it. The hardware ecosystem that exists for Meshtastic, do all of those devices work with Meshcore? Or are there any that don't?
All of them do that
Okay.
I know of.
So the
Yeah.
firmware is pretty much a
Mhm.
fork, like a direct fork of Meshtastic. Got it.
Mhm. Yeah, any of the devices that yeah, all my devices were Meshtastic, and now I've switched all of them to Meshcore. Yeah.
Yeah, there's
Which is
some
really-
caveats, like there's different Meshcore firmwares. There's one for client, there's one for room server. I think there's one for repeater, is that right?
You can do both now.
Okay.
So like I configured that to a repeater and a room server.
Yeah, until somewhat recently, like the last month or so, the client version didn't exist for like the T114, which is like everything I have.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I was like stuck. But yeah, I think now they finally
yeah,
have it
I
done.
think they have it now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They actually had a licensing problem, I found out.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, it was GPL code that they couldn't put in, which is kind of funny.
Okay. Yeah, I'm trying to think. There's yeah, if there's no, yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of described the differences. Those are the main differences between Meshcore and Meshtastic. The BBS service, you have to manually, you can, the newest version feature is like you can set it to advertise. So like I can set this one to advertise itself like once a day. And so it is pinging out there, but it's not using the bandwidth as much. Trying to think. Yeah, it's changing fast. It's moving really quickly. You can, so ATAK, I guess that's what I wanted. If I were to use ATAK, I'd probably just use this. You're not dependent on Android or a phone. You can put waypoints on here, and imagine they're just going to get better with that too. Like I can see where all the nodes are, and that's kind of the use case I would use it for. I can see. Yeah. Anything else? Or any other questions?
Off topic.
Yeah.
Rattlegram? I mean, what is that? Heard of it?
No.
Another new thing.
I can answer that. Rattlegram is a phone app that you can type text into, and it'll convert it to an audio signal. basically encodes it as like a digital audio signal that you can send over any radio. Most popular use case is probably going to be VHF ham bands, like 144 type stuff, 2 meter. But you can use 433, you can use GMRS, FRS, anything that will transmit that audio, you can use Rattlegram for, and it does it back and forth texting over that. Now, I've used it, it's a little hokey, like it kind of works. I mean, you have to have your radio next to your phone, so the phone speaker plays into the radio mic when you hold PTT down. Like, it's very manual. It does work. It's just kind of, it's not the most friendly user experience, if that makes sense.
Is there any other questions?
Just to make you walk.
Yep. I need it.
Oh. So are there for long distance and node to node for either one? Are there nodes, do we know, you talk about not having maps or not having maps. So are there nodes if you want to talk to someone in Seattle area via Meshtastic? Do you know if there's nodes in the area?
There's a lot.
I mean, you could eventually. Okay, I'll remember that.
That's why
That's
Meshtastic's so popular there.
I'll try to answer that. So Meshtastic actually has a feature built in called MQTT or Mosquito. And what that is a message relay over the internet. It's been around for a long time. It's usually used for IoT. I'm not sure if Meshcore has any MQTT stuff yet, but it might. But if you want to do long haul stuff over internet, you can do that with Meshtastic and actually bring in nodes from far away that way. Most people don't, but you can. You could also make it so you can configure it so your node is connected to your own MQTT server, not the public one, and set that all up over the internet, maybe get some hosting, and then federate to somewhere like Seattle over the internet, and their node would be connected to that same server. So that way you're not running through someone else's infrastructure, but you're still on the internet. So it's not quite as cool, if that makes sense. It's like Echolink.
I was just thinking of disasters and things like that when you're trying to reach long distance.
Yeah, as long as the internet's up, you could do it that way. You might be able to long haul it over HF if you really tried. Because there's nothing that makes these signals incompatible with HF, for instance.
Better get her hand license.
I remembered another feature. So it does have an app, Android and Apple, they're the same. Like the user interface are the exact same, Android and Apple, which is kind of nice. I know Meshtastic, it's kind of, you go from one to the other. It's like, where's this? Where is that? It's like, and so, and yeah, the app's super easy to use. And one of the cool features on Meshcore is you can set your path. So you can see a map of where the nodes are, and you're like, I want my path to go from here to here. And that could help in congested areas. Like if you're down Sandpoint and you see all these nodes and you're like, this would be this route is going to be more dependable than this route going through like the middle of Sandpoint with it can be helpful. Like right now, like let's say if there's like 200 radios out there, it would be really helpful. But in the beginning, it's not. Like it's. Go ahead. Did you?
I didn't raise my hand yet, but
Oh yeah, I saw it.
When's Little Black Shell coming back?
When's what?
When's the repeater coming
As soon as I can climb that mountain again.
Okay. Oh, you actually climbed. You didn't drive.
Oh, I drive,
Okay.
and then I climb.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
Yeah, no, I need to put it back up there.
You want help?
Yeah. Yeah.
I would volunteer some time.
It's just time. I'm like,
Yep.
I do construction, and so summer hit, and I'm like, yeah, I'm
Swamped.
hurting for
Yep.
time.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
get it.
and I have six kids.
Mhm.
So I have to. Yeah, I'm trying to juggle a lot.
Well, thank you for doing that.
Yeah, but I have a secret tree with the secret. Anyways, I'm not letting anybody know. No, that's the real reason. No, I wouldn't care. I wouldn't. Okay, go ahead. Anyways, and another tip for maybe hiding, if you want to be inconspicuous and throw things up in state land, is doing it in a birdhouse. Put North Idaho College on there. You know, it's an environmental thing. You know, you're trying to save the bats or something, but it has like a, you know, it has the antenna and solar on there.
My favorite is a 3D print a wasp's nest.
Yeah, that was cool. Good.
You briefly mentioned that you made these for friends.
Yeah.
Is this something you do on the side?
Yeah, I do it on the side.
Is there any way you could put an email up there that we could reach out to you if we wanted to say have 15 or 20 of these made?
Yeah. So I don't make every, you know, if you want a TDEC Plus with external antenna, I'm doing those right now. And then I will configure it for you. I'll train you. And so this is what I'm making. And then I'm also doing a version of this. And so if you want something else, then you Etsy is a really good place to find Meshtastic stuff. Yeah, type in Meshtastic in Etsy, and you'll get a ton of. There's really good people making good products out there, and you, even though it's Meshtastic, you can always switch it to Meshcore, which is really cool. And that's all I had. Any other questions?
Got one question over
Yeah,
here.
go ahead.
Okay, so I configured this LTAK this morning.
Yeah.
And I didn't know it worked till right now. Because I couldn't reach anybody in my area. So I do see one node in this room. Is there more?
But Meshtastic or Meshcore?
Meshtastic. Meshcore, come on later.
Yeah, there should be a lot.
I'm in a stroller. So there's only one on right now.
I don't have any Meshtastic.
I see a lot of blinking lights up there, so.
Yeah, there's like 3 up there. You see it below on Longfast just now?
Yeah, long fast.
Did you see it below just now?
And then another question was, so you name your device, right? What's the pros and cons with that? Because you could get real personal, like, hi, this is my address, you know, you're obviously not gonna do that, but somebody will. What is everybody doing with that? And it's like, is it helpful to like kind of name yourself as an area that you're in, like North Sandpoint or like Elmira, or you know what I mean? It's like, so you can kind of figure out, I know it, because they might have a location off. So I don't know what's, because I'm like, okay, I have to name this, I'm configuring it. It's like, what am I gonna name it? So I don't know. What's the rule of thumb on that?
It's whatever you want. Code name.
Is it helpful to like kind of like say I'm in North Sandpoint? I mean, is that any benefit?
Yeah, that's
So I
a
think
good
what we're
question.
asking is there benefit to other users to see roughly where that node is? Not exactly, but Elmira or Sagal or Clark.
I think that's super helpful. And you can set your coordinates. So like I know Meshtastic, you can shut off it updating exactly where you are and just put in set coordinates. And you can have it in downtown Elmira, or, you know, like, or downtown north of Sandpoint at the I don't know, somewhere.
Yeah.
Out the Sandpoint Building Supply, whatever. You're social. Yeah. I I'm a Lord of the Rings fan, and all my devices are, Gimli, yeah, Frodo, Sam, yeah. So I have Gandalf on there. Yeah, yeah. I don't. I personally use my name because I want, my personal device. When I was using Meshtastic, it was just so people know where that it's me. But yeah.
Do we have any other questions for Meshtastic or Meshcore?
Serious, last one. Okay. You were talking about long fast and other modem modes. I guess what I'm not 100% clear on is if I configure my Meshtastic device to operate in long fast, it will not hear messages from other nodes operating using a different modulation. So
Correct.
okay. So then the follow-up question to that, I lied. 2 questions.
Yeah.
This area, are we sure that long fast is the predominant modulation? So if I want to talk to the greater network that exists up in like Sandpoint, is it long fast, or are there other modem modes that I should consider possibly have a different node set up for?
I have pretty strong certainty it's the most popular, but
Okay.
to be fair, I have not tried the other ones very much.
Okay.
Long fast is what all the nodes come configured with by default. So
Oh,
people
okay.
don't change that.
Yeah.
And I mean, why would you change if you don't know what you're doing?
Right.
But yeah, like I've had over 100 nodes on my base station at home
Wow.
back when his repeater was set up, and now I'm down to 8.
I'm sorry. No,
We
no.
need Blacktail.
It's all your fault. No, I'm
I
kidding.
know. That was a good spot.
Is there any other questions? All right, I want to
I-
thank Eric.
I'm just gonna say, people were messaging corn for president.
It might be easier.
We don't want this getting out. This is why we keep it private, guys. No.
Thank you, John. Thank
Yeah.
you, Eric. You guys are all welcome to come up, take a look at the equipment, grab a cookie if there's any left.